All right, so today we're going to dive into something that's, I guess, a little perplexing.
Yeah.
A situation where the image that's being projected kind of clashes with the reality, what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, a fascinating case study. I mean, in terms of perception versus reality, especially in wartime leadership.
Yeah, and we're talking about President Zelensky of Ukraine and a Vogue photo shoot in the middle of a war. I mean, it's...
Yeah, it certainly raises eyebrows.
Yeah.
I mean, Zelensky has been a constant figure in the media since the conflict began.
Right.
Posing with troops appearing on the streets, giving interviews, addressing global platforms like the U.S. Congress, EU Parliament, the UN, the World Economic Forum.
Oh, wow.
Even the Cannes Film Festival.
Wow. He's clearly no stranger to the camera.
No.
The Vogue photo shoot. I mean, that feels different.
You're right. It's an unexpected choice.
Yeah.
And it's particularly interesting given his background as a comedian and actor.
Right.
It initially seemed like he was leveraging this media savvy to Ukraine's advantage, perhaps winning the PR war, as some have called it.
Right.
But is there more to it than that?
Yeah. Is there more to it?
Yeah.
I mean, and the Vogue article itself paints a very specific picture. I mean, they're describing the First Lady's clothing, even comparing the color of a shirt to get this burned out tanks. It's almost like they're trying to find fashion inspiration in the devastation.
That's a pretty stark contrast, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the one hand, you have this glamorous portrayal in Vogue, but on the other hand, the reality for people in Ukraine is far from glamorous. There have been heavy casualties and significant territorial losses.
Right. It makes you question the timing and the message.
Yeah.
I mean, is this really the best use of time and resources during a war?
Yeah.
What kind of message does this send to those on the front lines, those bearing the brunt of the conflict? Is this an attempt to distract from the lack of tangible progress?
Well, there have been growing accusations leveled against Zelensky.
Oh, wow.
He's being blamed for setbacks in the conflict, accused of focusing more on his personal brand than effectively leading the country.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
It is.
Wow.
And it's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Despite his constant presence in the media, Ukraine hasn't actually achieved key objectives.
Right.
Like joining NATO or the EU.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to remember the stark realities of war.
Right.
I mean, conflict brings immense suffering, loss, displacement.
And you see a fashion magazine,
Right.
typically associated with beauty and luxury.
Exactly.
Showcasing a country at war. I mean, it feels jarringly out of place.
Absolutely. The Vogue article itself seems to kind of gloss over these harsh realities, instead focusing on the First Lady's dignified and elegant appearance.
Yeah, and even the descriptions of her clothing choices seem tone deaf.
In this context, I mean, they compare a blouse color to the, burned out tanks littering the streets. I mean, it feels almost disrespectful to the gravity of the situation.
It's like they're trying to find fashion inspiration.
Exactly.
In the midst of destruction.
It's hard not to see it as trivializing the war and distracting from the real issues at stake. And the timing of this photo shoot 5 months into the war, after all the losses and devastation.
Yeah, you raise a valid point.
It adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah, it does make you question whether Zelensky's time and energy could be better directed towards addressing the urgent needs of the country.
Instead of focusing on meticulously crafting his image for international publications, shouldn't the priority be on dealing with the crisis at hand?
That's a perspective.
Yeah.
Some are voicing quite strongly.
Yeah.
They argue that while soldiers are putting their lives on the line, their leader appears preoccupied with photo shoots.
Right.
And building his personal brand.
That's a pretty scathing assessment.
It is. And it reflects the level of disillusionment felt by some towards Zelensky's leadership.
But we talked earlier about how Zelensky's media savvy was initially perceived as a strength.
Right.
His appeals for international support, his emotional speeches, I mean, they really seem to resonate.
Yeah, that's true in the early days of the conflict. His media appearances were undoubtedly effective.
Right.
He was hailed as a hero, a symbol of resistance. But as the war drags on and the situation on the ground becomes increasingly difficult, the focus appears to have shifted from action to optics.
So is it possible that a strategy that worked well initially has now become counterproductive?
That's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
Some argue that the reliance on this media persona may have created a false sense of success,
Right.
masking the lack of tangible results on the ground.
Like the fact that despite all the media attention, Ukraine hasn't made significant progress towards joining NATO or the EU.
And it's important to note that Zelensky has also been pointing fingers at his own officials, blaming them for setbacks.
Oh, really?
Even accusing some of treason.
Oh, wow. So he's trying to deflect blame from his own leadership.
That's one interpretation.
Wow.
It highlights the tension between the image of Zelensky as a unifying leader and the reality of internal conflict and blame shifting.
I mean, it really makes you think about who benefits from this narrative.
Right. Yeah.
What's the agenda behind this image being presented?
It's crucial to consider the broader geopolitical context.
Okay.
Some suggest that this carefully crafted image of Zelensky is part of a larger public relations effort and not one solely orchestrated by Ukraine.
So they're implying that this isn't just about Zelensky's personal ambition or a desire for the spotlight, that there are powerful forces shaping this narrative for their own purposes.
That's the argument being put forward.
Well,
the suggestion is that there are those who have a vested interest in portraying Zelensky as this heroic figure, a symbol of democracy standing against authoritarianism.
And that this portrayal, whether entirely accurate or not, helps to garner support for Ukraine while demonizing the opposition on the world stage.
Exactly. It plays into a larger narrative of good versus evil, which can be incredibly powerful when it comes to swaying public opinion and influencing policy decisions.
This really opens up a whole new dimension to the conversation. It's not just about a photo shoot or some media appearances. It's about how narratives are constructed and used to influence global events.
It underscores the importance of critically evaluating the information we consume, especially in these complex geopolitical situations.
So who's telling the story? What are their motivations? Is there any information that might be missing or deliberately omitted? Wow. So when we step back and look at the bigger picture, what's the true cost of this kind of image making during wartime? Is it a necessary tool for rallying support and allies? Or can it backfire, creating a disconnect from the harsh realities on the ground?
It's a delicate balance, that's for sure.
Yeah.
On one hand, effective communication is essential. In wartime, leaders need to inspire, rally international support. And counter opposing propaganda.
But as we've seen in this case, too much focus on image can create a gap between perception and reality.
Exactly. And that gap can erode trust, fuel cynicism, and ultimately undermine the very cause they're trying to promote.
This deep dive has really been eye-opening. It makes you realize how easily we can be influenced by carefully crafted narratives, how much we might take at face value without questioning the motives behind them.
It's a reminder to be more discerning, more critical of the information we're presented with, and to always seek out multiple perspectives.
To challenge our own biases and to really dig for the truth, even when it's messy and complicated.
Absolutely.
Thanks for walking us through this fascinating and thought-provoking discussion.
It's been a pleasure. I hope it encourages our listeners to do their own research, ask their own questions, and never stop seeking a deeper understanding of the world around them.
Subscribe to our podcast, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear. New episodes every day.